My daughter rushed into my room at midnight shaking and bleeding. She whispered, "Mom, someone's been in my room watching me sleep." I grabbed my gun, walked to her closet, and what I saw inside made my blood run cold. It was just past midnight when my daughter Emily rushed into my bedroom. Her hands were shaking, her face pale, and there was blood running down her arm from a small cut. With trembling lips, she whispered, "Mom, someone's been in my room, watching me sleep." My heart froze. I grabbed my gun, walked down the hallway, and when I opened her closet door, what I saw inside made my blood run cold. Before I tell you the full story, make sure to subscribe to the channel, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. My name is Marion Cole. I am 64 years old, a widow, and I live in a quiet, small-town neighborhood. After my husband Daniel passed away a few years ago, my daughter Emily and my granddaughter Sophie moved back into my home. Emily had just gone through a painful divorce, and she needed a safe place to start over. I welcomed them with open arms because this house, though filled with memories of my husband, felt too big and too quiet without family inside it. Life in our home was calm, but heavy at times. Emily worked long hours and often looked tired, carrying the weight of everything she had been through. Sophie, at only 14, was trying to adjust to a new school and new friends. She sometimes wandered into my room late at night, saying she couldn't sleep. I didn't mind. It reminded me that she was still just a child who needed comfort. One evening, Emily sat with me at the kitchen table. Her eyes looked weary, but she smiled and said, "Mom, thank you for letting us stay here. I don't know what I would have done without you." I reached across the table, squeezing her hand. "You don't need to thank me. This is your home as much as it is mine." That night, as we locked the doors and settled into bed, I felt a quiet peace. The world outside might be unpredictable, but inside these walls, I believed we were safe. My biggest worry was helping Emily rebuild her life and making sure Sophie felt loved and protected. But safety can be an illusion. I would learn that in the most terrifying way, because just after midnight, the sound of hurried footsteps in the hallway woke me. And when Emily burst into my room, bleeding and trembling, I knew everything was about to change. When Emily burst into my bedroom that night, I could see the terror in her eyes before she even spoke. Her whole body was trembling, her skin pale as if the blood had drained out of her face. The cut on her arm wasn't deep, but the sight of blood against her nightshirt made my stomach twist. She clutched my sleeve and whispered, "Mom, someone's been in my room." I woke up and I swear I saw someone standing near the closet, watching me. The word struck me harder than a blow. For a moment, I thought she must be imagining it, a nightmare brought on by exhaustion. But the way her voice cracked, the way her eyes darted back toward the hallway told me she wasn't making it up. She had seen something, someone. I pulled her close, trying to calm her shaking. "Emily, take a deep breath. You're safe now. You're here with me." But even as I said the words, I felt my own heart pounding. Safe? I wasn't sure if that was true anymore. Before I could gather my thoughts, Sophie came stumbling in, rubbing her eyes. "Grandma, what's wrong? Why are you both awake?" She froze when she saw the blood on her mother's arm. Her voice dropped to a frightened whisper. "What happened?" I didn't want her to panic, so I quickly said, "It's all right, sweetheart. Your mom just scratched herself, but we're going to be careful." Inside, though, I was anything but calm. My ears strained, listening for any sound beyond the three of us. The house was quiet, too quiet. I walked over to the nightstand drawer where I kept Daniel's old revolver. He had taught me how to use it years ago, insisting that I should always know how to protect myself. My hands shook as I picked it up, but holding it gave me a small sense of control. Emily's voice broke the silence. "Mom, don't go in there alone, please. What if he's still here?" I looked at her, seeing both my grown daughter and the frightened child she used to be. "I can't ignore this. If someone is in my house, I need to know. I need to protect you both." I told Emily to take Sophie back to my room and lock the door behind them. "No matter what you hear, don't open the door until I come back," I instructed. Emily tried to protest, but she saw the look on my face and nodded reluctantly. Sophie clung to her, wide-eyed, before they slipped back into the bedroom. Now it was just me, the gun heavy in my hand and the silence of the house pressing in on me. I stepped into the hallway, the floorboards creaking under my feet. Every shadow looked sharper than usual, every corner darker. My ears caught faint sounds, a soft draft, the ticking of the clock in the living room, the hum of the refrigerator, but I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was still here, holding their breath in the darkness. When I reached Emily's room, I hesitated at the door. It was half open, the way it had been when she ran out. My pulse quickened. I pushed it wider and stepped inside. The air felt cooler, as if a window had been left open. Sure enough, the curtain stirred slightly and I noticed the window on the far side was cracked open. I moved closer and saw muddy footprints on the wooden floor. My stomach dropped. They were too large to be Emily's or Sophie's, and they trailed from the window to the closet. That's when I knew this wasn't a nightmare. Someone had been here. Someone had been standing in that room, watching my daughter sleep. My breath caught in my throat as I stared at the closet door. It was closed, but not completely. The edge was slightly ajar, just enough to make the darkness inside seem deeper, more threatening. I raised the gun, my hands trembling, and called out in a low, firm voice, "If anyone is in there, come out right now." Silence. The silence was worse than noise. My own heartbeat thundered in my ears. I took a cautious step forward, never taking my eyes off that sliver of darkness between the door and the frame. Again, I spoke, my voice shaking, but strong enough to carry. "This is your only chance. Come out now." Still nothing. The quiet pressed in on me, heavy and suffocating. My mind raced. What if he was armed? What if he lunged at me the moment I opened the door? But what if I did nothing, and he was still hiding there, waiting for another chance to hurt Emily or Sophie? I couldn't risk it. I tightened my grip on the gun and took another step closer. The smell of damp earth drifted out from the closet, mixing with the faint metallic scent of blood from Emily's cut. Every instinct in my body screamed danger, but a stronger force pushed me forward, the need to protect my family. I reached out slowly with my free hand and placed it on the closet door. My fingers trembled against the cool wood. For a brief moment, I shut my eyes, whispered a prayer, and then yanked the door open. The closet door swung open with a sharp creak, and I held my breath, the revolver steady in my trembling hands. For a split second, the space looked empty, just coats and boxes stacked on the floor. Relief started to creep in, but then I noticed the coats swaying slightly, as though they'd just been disturbed. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it echoing in my ears. I took a cautious step closer, pushing the coats aside with the barrel of the gun. That's when I saw it, a boot print on the closet floor, fresh and wet with mud, pressed into the wooden boards. Someone had been here, maybe only seconds before. My throat tightened. He could still be in the house. I backed away slowly, closing the closet again, but not taking my eyes off it. Every instinct screamed at me that I couldn't just wait for the police to arrive. If the intruder was still here, if he was hiding somewhere else in the house, I needed to protect Emily and Sophie. They were depending on me. I thought of Daniel, my late husband, who always said, "When it comes down to it, Marion, family comes first. You fight for them, even if you're afraid." His words steadied me. I made my way down the hallway, every step deliberate, my ears straining for the faintest sound. The house seemed alive with shadows. My breath came in shallow bursts and my finger rested lightly on the trigger. At any moment he could jump out. When I reached my bedroom, I tapped gently on the door. Emily's anxious voice called out, "Mom, is it safe? Stay inside. Keep the door locked." I whispered back firmly, "Don't come out until I say. Please don't go alone," she begged, her voice shaking. "I have to," I replied. "I won't let him get near you or Sophie again." For a long moment, I stayed outside the door, torn between fear and determination. Part of me wanted to stay locked in that room with them until morning, but another part knew I wouldn't be able to live with myself if I ignored the danger. If he was still here, I had to find him. I decided to check the rest of the house. My steps were careful, my eyes scanning every corner. The living room was dark, only faint moonlight filtering through the curtains. I noticed the back door was unlocked. My blood ran cold. Had I forgotten to bolt it earlier, or had he slipped in that way? The thought of him moving freely through the same rooms where Sophie did her homework, where Emily and I sat drinking tea at night, filled me with a deep rage that cut through my fear. I locked the door quickly and turned my attention to the dining room. As I scanned the space, I noticed a chair slightly out of place, angled differently from the rest. I moved closer, and there on the seat was a scrap of fabric, dark and torn, like it had been caught on something. I held it up in the faint light. It wasn't ours. That was all the confirmation I needed. He was here, and he had been moving around the house while we slept. A floorboard creaked behind me. I spun around, gun raised, but saw nothing. My chest tightened as the silence closed in again. Whoever he was smart, patient, and waiting. I went back to Emily's room, forcing myself to face the closet once more. I yanked it open again, this time with more force. Determined not to let fear control me, the coat swung wide, and a draft of cold air hit my face. That's when I noticed something I had missed before. At the back of the closet, a narrow panel was slightly ajar. It wasn't just a closet, there was a crawl space behind it. My entire body went cold. The idea that someone could have been slipping in and out of that hidden space, watching, waiting, made my stomach twist in horror. Emily had been sleeping in this room, unaware that a secret passage led directly into her closet. I knew then that I couldn't wait another second. The choice was clear. I had to open that crawl space and face whatever was inside. If I turned away, if I left it, I'd never be able to close my eyes at night again. I whispered under my breath, "This ends now." With the gun steady in my hand, I reached for the panel. My fingers brushed against the rough wood, and I pulled it open. The darkness behind it was absolute, swallowing the faint glow from the hallway. I steadied my breathing, every nerve in my body tense. I leaned closer, peering into the crawl space, knowing I was about to discover the truth that had been hiding in my house. And in that moment, fear and courage collided inside me, sharpening into one thought. Whatever was waiting, I had to face it. For Emily, for Sophie, and for myself. I stood frozen at the edge of the crawl space, the darkness stretching before me like an open mouth ready to swallow me whole. My pulse thundered in my ears. Every instinct screamed at me to shut the panel and walk away, to call the police and wait. But another voice, stronger, fiercer, pushed me forward. This was my home. Emily and Sophie were counting on me. If someone was in here, it was my responsibility to face them before they hurt my family again. I raised the gun higher and leaned closer to the opening. "If anyone's in there, I'm warning you, come out now." My voice was firm, but I felt the tremor in it. Silence pressed back at me, thick and suffocating. Then, a faint rustle. The sound was so small I thought at first I imagined it, but as my eyes adjusted, I caught the slightest shift of movement deeper in the crawl space, like something trying to melt into the shadows. My stomach dropped. He was in there. My breath hitched. I said, "Come out." I barked louder this time. A figure stirred. Slowly, as though crawling out of a nightmare, a man began to emerge from the blackness. His face came into view first. Gaunt, pale, his eyes wide and glassy. His hair was greasy, hanging over his forehead, and a twisted smile tugged at his lips, as if he enjoyed the fear etched across my face. He was clutching something in his hand, and when the light hit it, I saw the blade glint. My blood ran cold. He had been hiding in my home, inches away from my sleeping daughter. He crouched in the crawl space doorway, his voice low and rasping. "She looks just like her father. I've been watching her, night after night." The bile rose in my throat. Rage drowned my fear. "You've been in this house?" I demanded, my voice shaking with fury. He tilted his head, grinning wider. "Every night. She never knew. Sometimes I'd stand right over her bed, just listening to her breathe." I felt my knees weaken, but I steadied myself, gripping the gun tighter. "Get out," I ordered, pointing it straight at his chest. "Step out, right now." For a second, he didn't move. His eyes darted between me and the gun, as if calculating whether I had the courage to pull the trigger. Then, in one quick motion, he lunged forward, swinging the knife. I stumbled back, adrenaline flooding through me, and raised the revolver. My voice ripped out of me. "Don't move." He froze mid-step, the barrel inches from his chest. His smile faltered, replaced with a twisted scowl. From down the hallway, I heard Emily scream, "Mom, what's happening? Stay in the room." I shouted without turning my head. My entire focus was on the man in front of me, his chest rising and falling rapidly, the knife still glinting in his grip. My hands trembled, but my voice was steel. "Drop the knife." For a moment, it seemed like he might resist. Then, with a sharp clang, the blade hit the floorboards. The sound echoed through the house like a gunshot. I forced him backward into the light, keeping the gun trained on him. As he stepped into Emily's room, the stench of sweat and dirt clung to him. That's when I noticed the strap of a bag slung across his shoulder. I ordered him to drop it. He sneered, but obeyed, letting it fall. Emily had come to the door despite my warning, her face pale. Sophie clung to her leg, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Mom, is he the one?" Emily whispered. I nodded. "He's the one." With my foot, I nudged the bag open. My stomach turned. Inside were pages of a notebook filled with drawings, sketches of Sophie sleeping, notes about when Emily left her room, even details of my nightly routine. He had been watching us for weeks, maybe months, Emily gasped, covering her mouth. "Oh my God." The man's voice was eerily calm. "I just wanted to be close, to see her. She doesn't know how much I care." "Care?" My voice cracked with fury. "You broke into my home. You hurt my daughter. You hid in her closet like a monster." Police sirens wailed faintly in the distance. Emily must have called them the second she heard my shouts. Relief surged through me, but I didn't lower the gun. Not yet. Not until I saw him taken away. The man glared at me, his calm demeanor cracking into something darker, more unhinged. "She'll think of me. She'll remember I was here." I stepped closer, pressing the gun steady. "She will forget you. She'll remember her mother and her grandmother protecting her. That's all she'll remember." Moments later, the police burst through the front door, weapons drawn. They wrestled him to the ground, cuffed his hands, and dragged him away as he shouted nonsense, his voice echoing through the house, until it finally disappeared into the night. When the door shut behind them, my knees buckled. Emily rushed to me, wrapping her arms around me as Sophie sobbed into my shoulder. The weight of what had just happened hit me all at once. The fear, the fury, the relief, it came crashing down. But above it all was one thought. We were alive. The nightmare had been hiding in our home. But we had faced it, and we had survived. The house was quiet again after the police left, but it wasn't the kind of quiet I was used to. It wasn't peaceful. It was heavy, filled with the echoes of what had just happened. The closet door hung open, the crawl space still gaping like a wound. The smell of the man's sweat and dirt seemed to linger in the air, even though he was gone. Emily sat on the couch, pale and trembling, holding Sophie tightly in her arms. Sophie buried her face in her mother's shoulder, her little body shaking with sobs. I stood there for a long time, still gripping the revolver in my hand, my knuckles white, unable to let go. When I finally lowered the gun and placed it back on the table, the weight of it left me feeling both empty and exhausted. I sat beside them, pulling Sophie into my arms. Her tears soaked my blouse as she whispered, "Grandma, he was really in my room. He was really watching me." I swallowed the lump in my throat and kissed the top of her head. "Yes, sweetheart. But he's gone now. He will never come back. You're safe." The words were steady, but deep inside I was trembling. I didn't know if I would ever feel safe again, not in the same way. Emily looked at me, her eyes glassy. "Mom, I should have noticed. I should have listened when I felt something was wrong. I thought I was just being paranoid," but her voice cracked. I failed to protect her. I took her hand firmly. "Don't you dare blame yourself. None of this is your fault. You did everything right. You came to me. You called the police. You saved your daughter. We protected her together." The three of us sat like that for a long time, clinging to each other, the night slowly giving way to dawn. The golden light of morning spilled into the room, but instead of comfort, it only showed the damage more clearly. The footprints on the floor, the open window, the scraps of paper in that man's bag. Every reminder was proof of how close we had come to losing everything. The police returned later that morning to take statements. They told us the man had been squatting in abandoned houses nearby. He had watched us for weeks, slipping into our home at night through the unlocked window. The notebook they recovered revealed his obsession with Sophie, his drawings, his writings, his detailed notes about our daily life. Hearing this made my stomach turn. The thought that he had been lurking in our house, watching from the shadows while we slept, made me feel violated in a way I couldn't put into words. That day, I had every lock replaced. I had the crawl space sealed shut and reinforced. I walked through every inch of the house, checking windows, doors, and closets until I was certain there was no way in that we didn't know about. Emily helped, her hands still shaking as she screwed new bolts into the frames. Sophie followed me everywhere, refusing to leave my side. I promised her over and over again, "This house is safe now. No one will ever hurt you here again." But the truth is, safety is never something you can guarantee. It's something you fight for every day. That night, as I lay in bed, sleep refused to come. I thought about Daniel, my late husband, and how proud he would have been to see me stand my ground. Fear had nearly paralyzed me, but love gave me the strength to protect my family. I realized then that courage isn't about not being afraid. It's about facing the fear anyway. Over the next few weeks, Emily and Sophie began to heal slowly. Sophie returned to school, though she still insisted on sleeping with her door open and the lights on. Emily grew more protective, checking every lock before bed, sometimes twice. And me? I carried on, but something inside me had changed. I no longer took the silence of my home for granted. I listened more carefully, I noticed small details, and I trusted my instincts. One evening, as we sat together at dinner, Sophie asked, "Grandma, why do people do bad things like that man?" I thought for a moment before answering. Because sometimes people are broken and they make choices that hurt others. But what matters is that we are stronger than the fear they try to bring into our lives. We faced him and we won. That's what you remember. Her small smile gave me hope. Looking back now, I understand that the terror of that night left scars we will always carry. But it also left us with something else, a deeper bond, a stronger sense of family, and the knowledge that love can give us courage even in the darkest moments. I will never forget the image of that man in the crawlspace, but I will also never forget the sight of my daughter and granddaughter, safe in my arms, alive and protected. To anyone listening to my story, remember this: danger can find its way into the most ordinary places, but so can courage. Don't ever doubt your strength to protect the people you love.